welcome back to GrandOldTeam TV. I'm joined by Jim Keoghan. There you go, Jim. Was that right?
Yeah,
spot on.
That's right, yeah.
Cool, Jim Keoghan. Jim's actually, that's really rude because Jim has been on GrandOldTeam TV before, and I got his name drastically wrong that time, so I wanted to have a better go. But as we said last time, I think, Jim, I don't think I'm the only one who gets your surname wrong.
No, most people do, so don't worry about it.
Keoghan, there you go. I'm going to try and remember that now, Jim. But, mate, I appreciate you coming back on. This is the second time you've been on GrandOldTeam TV, mate. So you and Sedo now are the two most frequent appearers, if that's a word. I just made that word up. You're an author. You'll correct me on that if it isn't. I don't think it is. You're like the Gareth Barrys now of GrandOldTeam TV. How do you feel, mate?
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, let's hope you don't slow down as much as Gareth Barry has done over the last few games for Everton, because we've got a few things that we need to talk about. First being how dreadful everything is at the moment, mate, with Everton Football Club. We're going to talk about your book in a second. For those of you who don't know, Jim's written a book a few years back now. When did you actually finish the book, actually, mate? Was it earlier this year?
Finished it... I think it was early this year, and it came out. It came out early this year. I finished it towards the end of 2015, around then.
Yeah, so it's Everton in the 90s, the highs, lows, and Bakayoko's. I'm nearing towards the back end of the 90s era now in the book. As I was just saying to you then, mate, and I actually mean this, I really am enjoying it, and it's nice to give you a bit of perspective, Blues. If any of you haven't read it yet, I'd advise you get over to Amazon, make obviously a fantastic Christmas present. And it's appropriate at this time, Jim, because it reminds us of how bad things actually were in the 90s at different periods. Obviously, it wasn't all bad, as you rightly point out in the book, and maybe gives us a bit of perspective of the situation in the current era. However, there are some parallels, and I want to talk about them and pick your brains and find out whether or not you agree with me with regards to those parallels. But first of all, let's just talk about Everton in the modern day then, mate. So, yesterday, Watford, dreadful again. Mate, what's going on?
They seem to lack fight. Really, I mean, you're watching that game yesterday, and Watford just looked. It's Watford, and they look stronger and faster and more committed. Like they actually care about the results. Whereas Everton, they still look like a Martinez side. Last season's Martinez side, where they're going out and each week, and they don't look bothered. They're second to every ball. They're getting hustled off balls. And, the top flight is a physical league. And if that doesn't change, then teams are constantly going to boss us. And Watford bossed us yesterday. It was, for most of the game. At the end, we rallied, as we tend to lately. Yeah. And we took the game to them. And there was an improvement there. But for most of that game, certainly from our goal onwards until maybe the last, 10 minutes, we were second to everything. And it's depressing to watch.
We're so weird. Like how... Normally, when a side gets in front, the confidence then grows, and you go on to obviously, in theory, that's you've got yourselves in front. You can then build upon that. For us yesterday, it's like we went ahead and then just bottled it. It was like we'd gone behind. Very strange. And as you say, mate, I'm sick to death of this side now. And just going back to the 90s for a second. And someone made this point on Twitter today, and it's correct. We knew that those sides of the 90s that were extremely poor, I'm thinking 94 and 98 specifically, we knew those were poor sides, but at least they had spines. They'd go and they'd go in the bigger games, United, Liverpool's, etc. We pick up wins in that area, and they just seemed to have a little bit of a backbone. All right, they weren't the most gifted players. I can't say the same about these lads now. I can't say the same for Gerard Deulofeu, Kevin Morales. To be fair, I've not seen a lot from Leighton Baines that makes me think that he has that anymore, that desire this season, and it's just terrible. And you know what's frightening now, Jim, as well, the fact that you look at we were 1 in 10, is it now? 1 in 11. It's not good. And then you're like, we've got Arsenal next, we've got Liverpool next. That could turn into then Leicester, who've got a decent result yesterday. It's not looking good. What does Koeman need to do, in your opinion, Jim, in January? What would you like him to do?
I think he needs to get rid of players who they look tainted by the last 2 years. I think there are a handful of players who look so affected by what's happened, Evan. Whether partly Martinez, maybe partly the crowd turning against them. I think there's a handful there, and you've mentioned a few of them, who maybe just aren't going to do it for Everton. And we need to bring a new player. You look at someone like Gay who's come in. He's not touched by the past few years, and he's performing week in, week out under Koeman. So I think we need, unquestionably need fresh blood. You need somebody to link the back four of the midfield with the front three. Yesterday you had like 3 defensively minded midfielders and 3-4 people and nothing in between.
Yeah.
So that's meant to be Barkley, and at the start of the season when Barkley's playing okay, people doing okay. You need that kind of creative force in linking the two ends of the pitch to do something rather than just smacking it along to Lukaku, which seems to be our main tactic. Whack it into him, see what happens. And it's you will get goals doing that, but you won't win many games at this level, and we're not clearly.
Yeah, definitely, and that issue that you pointed on there, which is spot on with regards to this link-up play. We had a midfield yesterday that was extremely uncreative. One of the most flat midfield. It's no. Look, we're massive fans of Garner, and he's terrific, and he does have that tenacity, as you've said, rightly pointed out. But he's not really a creative player as such, is he? Gareth Barry isn't, and James McCarthy or Tom Cleverley definitely isn't. So that's an issue. I'm looking at it, Jim, just going through the side. We need another keeper. We need another full-back cover for Leighton Baines. We need another centre-half. We need another centre midfielder. We need potentially 2. We need 2 more wide men because Yannick Bolasie's out now. You're talking about players who weren't affected by the past. Yannick Bolasie, what did you make to the stick that Yannick Bolasie got when it was announced that he was going to be out for long term? And they're almost like there was some Evertonians celebrating. I was like, I can't. Why?
He hasn't really been here long enough to kind of make that much of a judgment, and I think in a better side he could really shine. I think the problem is there's so much else wrong with Everton at the moment that some of these new players you can't really tell just how good they could be. I think you're right. I think if you brought in maybe 3 or 4 players, then you could carry the weakness elsewhere. I think the problem is right now there's too much weakness everywhere, and I think if that doesn't get addressed properly in January, then we're going to be in for a really tough season. The way we're going, we're going to get sucked further and further down the league, and the possibility of a relegation dogfight is on. It's we're that bad now, and Koeman can't get anything out of the players he's got, so he has to bring in a lot of fresh blood and quality players. At the moment, you need people who can come in now and do a job, not think about at least a couple who can come in now and perform at this level. We can't think, maybe in a year's time or 2 years' time, we need proper Premier League, good Premier League players instantly to have an impact.
Yeah, and that presents another issue, though, in the sense of how much business can you get done in January. Clubs know that we're desperate. That's an issue. And then, as you say, getting sucked in. And the issue is with these players. I've got... So, obviously, a lot of my mates are Stoke fans, and they don't watch Everton every week. And I was down with my mates earlier, and he was saying, you've got a good squad, though. And I was like... Mate, we haven't this myth that is, and I don't blame other supporters for saying it. And he's like, but on paper, I look at your side, and even when I look at the the people on the outskirts like Lennon and that, I'm like, he's like, Lennon's a good player, and I'm like, yeah, in theory, Aaron Lennon is a decent player, but he's a good example of somebody who got his contract and then has literally just dropped off the face of the earth and has been extremely poor. And this idea that we've got a good squad, I think, is a bit of a myth. But in January, we've just listed there. We both accept probably you're looking at 7 or 8 players, right, to get us to a level where we need to be. That's not going to happen in January, is it? No. I think he needs to bring in
impact players. Maybe you can get three good players who can give him an option. You think now, like, you lose Balas. Who do you have to turn to? You can turn to Deulofeu, who isn't performing. Lennon isn't performing. Even Morales, he's not performing. There's nothing there to turn to. We've recruited for the past 2 years. If you look at who's been brought in, it's dire. Our backup squad, you could field a first 11 for Everton of just shit players who, people like McGeady still in the books.
Forget that.
Robles, even Finis Mori, he's not great. He's not a first. Cleverly, he's a squad player at best. We've just brought in, again, largely down to Martinez. He had control of who he brought in, and it's just crap. It's it's a side that if you put that on paper, you'd look at it and you say, yeah, that side could go down, probably deserve to. I mean, you're right, it's a myth. This isn't the greatest Everton squad we've seen in years. It's a lot of shit, and it's a lot of players who don't seem to give a shit about the club, and it's and a lot of them together, they're not a team. They don't seem to care about putting in a decent performance. The only team we've beaten recently was West Ham. I mean, they're crap as well. So it's not like we're doing, the form is awful, and unless it's remedied soon, it's going to be another kind of bleak 4 months to face.
Oh, I don't think I can take it, Jim. Seriously, somebody get me the vodka, mate. What has Koeman done himself any favours though? Because he hasn't endeared. I don't like him. I'm going to say it. I don't like Ronald Koeman. I don't like him as a person. I liked Martinez. I did actually like him. Well, at first I loved him, obviously, as most of us did.
Yeah.
But even in the end, even though I was like, please just move, because he's an ideologue, and I was like, please just separate yourself from this ideology and this idea of how you think football should be played, just for your own sake. But I still liked him. Moyes was a miserable bastard, but I liked him. I don't like Ronald Koeman, and do you think that's an issue that he hasn't brought into the club? He evidently doesn't care about Everton. How much of that plays into it?
But I think, I think he's a bastard. I think that have gone from one extreme to the other. We had a lovely, nice man in Martinez who ended up being shite. So we thought, what's the opposite? Let's get a bastard. And he doesn't care. For well, Koeman wouldn't be at Everton for more than 5 years tops. He's got his eye on other things. We're a stepping stone, and that's fine by me if it does a job. I don't mind having a bastard in charge if he gets us top 6 and wins a trophy. That's great. I'm not too bothered about someone who buys into the club, because I don't think that's why we got him. You know what he is. Problem at the moment is that he's a bastard who's not doing a good job, which is you haven't even got a nice man in charge to kind of make you feel a bit better. You've just got this arsehole who's who can't win a game. That's, to me, is the main thing. I don't really care if he kind of has red decorations on his tree and all that kind of stuff. He watches Liverpool. Fine. If he wins games, fine. That's that's the whole point of this Merseyside project of kind of getting top class managers, and you can bring in massive signings. The problem at the moment is that it's just he's not even doing that. So you just got a shit in charge.
I was comparing him when I was reading the book yesterday. I was comparing him to Royle, and I was like, obviously I get that how everyone speaks very highly of Howard Kendall, but his second stint at manager wasn't great, and we'll get onto that in a second. But I was thinking about Royle, and I was thinking about how likeable Joe Royle is as a man.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Koeman, and in our lifetimes, because you're not that much older than me, Jim, are you, mate? I don't think. What, you're early 30s? Did we discuss this last time?
I'm early 40s.
Are you?
Yeah.
No way, mate. What on earth are you eating?
I'm a writer, so I don't really work that hard. It's kind of idle sloth is the key to staying young, I think.
Seriously, mate, I didn't have you. Yeah. Honestly, I thought you were like 31.
Sorry, go on.
No, I thought you were 31.
Oh no, I just sit on my arse all day, so there's no stress involved. So that's the key.
But that baby face, mate. That's it's that baby
laziness.
Face. Is that what
laziness?
It is? Well, fair enough. I need to be more lazy. I think I'm.
Yeah, you definitely do. I can't be arse aging. That's what it is.
Good shout. But I was all right. So fair enough. But in my lifetime, Joe Royle's probably the most likeable manager we've had as a man. I'd love Joe Royle being my dad. Or my granddad. He'd be a great granddad, wouldn't he, Joe Royle? Don't you think?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I interviewed him for this book, and he's just lovely, and he's clearly somebody who kind of he's somebody who loved the club, got Everton, and did a good job. Which I think that's the dream, really. I mean, he while he was there, it went a bit sour towards the end, but while he was kind of on it, he was fantastic. He was kind of the dream manager, really.
Yeah, and there's a great quote in your book when he was getting a bit of stick off of one of the top journalists at the Echo, and he said to another one of the journalists, because they weren't speaking at the time, he said, next time you see him, I can't remember which one it was, he says, tell him I hope his next shit is a hedgehog. And that's what Royle said, and I was like, it made me giggle. I was like, that's fantastic. That's a great quote. All right, so we've spoken enough about the current situation. We both agree it is absolute dog shit.
Yeah.
But what what parallels, right? So the bit of the book that I've been focusing on recently is Peter Johnson's acquisition of Everton. And when he came in, Peter Johnson was like, look, we're going to invest heavily in the squad, which he did to some extent. But he also, spoke about how we were going to be like, a lot more efficient off the pitch in terms of commercially and stuff. And then I'm thinking about the kind of things that Mashiri said recently. And the fact that there was a lot of promise of investment. And I'm thinking, are there any parallels to be made? What sort of what's that? Is that the microwave going off there?
Yeah, so it's the dishwasher going off. So
is it?
That, yeah.
Fair enough. Well, you're too lazy to do it, mate. That's why you've got a dishwasher.
The parallels. Yeah, I think as you were saying earlier, I think there's the biggest one is probably hope in that both men gave Evertonians the sense that there was big change coming. I think that was the main thing. I think certainly as a kind of a young fan back then, when I'm kind of going through the Echo and reading all the information and the quote that would come out in the kind of interviews, you felt that here was kind of with Johnson a breath of fresh air. He's kind of someone who, the dog days of the Moors era, Everton were kind of stale. There was no investment. There was, I think I mentioned last time, there was Dr. David Marsh was the chairman of the club when the Premier League launched, and it's somebody who didn't seem to even like football, and he's there to kind of drive Everton forward. When you compare him to someone like David Dean at Arsenal, who really got the change that was happening. So Johnson had done great things at Tranmere. He'd kind of he'd taken them from the brink of going into the conference, and he pulled up. And I think people forget that in '94, when we almost went down, there was a chance there. Tranmere were in the playoffs. There was a very real chance of Tranmere coming up, us going down, and next season's derby being white on red. That's how good things have got for them, and how bad things have got for us.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So he came in, and there was two bids on the table. There was one involving Ken Wright, which was just buying the Moore shares. And Johnson came with fresh capital investment into Everton, which is mainly, he said he wanted for transfers. So yeah, in that sense, very similar. You've got this new person coming in with a kind of a proven business pedigree, and both of them are saying we're going to revitalise the club, and we're going to improve the commercial side, we're going to bring money for transfers. And on both occasions, you've got the sense that beforehand things weren't great. There was a talk about the club, and now you've got these two businessmen coming forward and saying, right, it's going to change. And obviously with Johnson, it wasn't great.
But it started well though, didn't it?
Well, he first came in, and I'm not sure if people remember, but we were kind of it was quite a drawn out saga, the takeover. It took a long time to resolve. When the Moors first mentioned he wanted to sell, to the point where he actually took control. I think it wasn't long before the Wimbledon game that he finally took control. So he wasn't the man who appointed Walker, but he came in and we survived. And then I think he was fair to the man being put in charge. He said, I'll give you the summer. So that was the 94 World Cup. So it was kind of USA. So we were linked with loads of big names, kind of Klinsmann, I think we were linked with. That. So in the end, we ended up with Vinny Sandways as our kind of, and our only signing who arrived before the season started. And then our marquee signing was Amakachi, which again, it's not fantastic. So we start the season there, and I think he was the one thing in Johnson's favour. He was quick to realise, I think, that Walker was the wrong man. I think, you kind of think if the Moors had been in charge at the time, he may have stayed in the job. But he, when it became clear that he was just a disaster, then he acted quickly. He went, and then whereas Walker had taken 6 weeks to become Everton manager, Royle was in within a few days. That was essential. You think when you're fighting relegation, you need fast action. Yeah, and he came in.
Was Royle? I can't remember. Was Royle employed by Oldham at the time? Was he?
Yeah, we've just taken them down. In some ways, people often point to kind of appointing Martinez. You don't appoint a manager who's taken a club down. Well, Royle had done that. He'd taken Oldham down, but what he had done for a few seasons is proven that he could fight relegation, because Oldham, never really done anything other than struggled. And he'd had a few good cup runs, and that's Joe Royle. Somebody who gets Everton. He's going to be an instant favourite with the fans. And from the moment he came in, I think for about 2 years, it was great. It was a great time to be an Evertonian. I mean, you've got to think we survived relegation against the odds. I mean, Royals, Everton, the form they had when he first came to end the season was fantastic. We went from being like the worst team in the league by some distance to being a top 6 team, which is a massive turnaround. Very few managers managed to do that over that kind of period. And of course, we won an FA Cup. And alongside that, Johnson put his money where his mouth is. Big names came in. We got Ferguson, and then we got Kanchelskis, and later on we got Speed, and he bought Bilic and Craig Shaw. So the money was definitely spent. There was no kind of. I mean, they weren't lies. There was 2 lots of investment came into Everton, and both lots were spent on players, which put us on a par with the likes of Newcastle and Liverpool and Arsenal for the first time in years. We were actually spending money, and yeah, for a while it looked like great. Here we are, we've won a cup, we finished 6th, we've got players like Kanchelskis, who was just, to watch him play was phenomenal. When that season he kind of switched on, he was just wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Probably the only player from that era who could fit into the kind of the mid-80s side. He was that good. At the same time...
Gary Speed was a good player as well, though, wasn't he? Gary Speed.
Yeah, he was a good player. I mean, a lot of players we bought back then, apart from maybe Bilic, they were pretty good when we spent him. And I think alongside that, he did some good stuff. Like we had the shop at the ground was kind of revamped at the new mega store. The Evertonian was launched like a magazine. It wasn't perfect. He did some, he was a bit kind of he didn't seem to hold the fans in high regard at times. And he brought in this match day mascot, I think, called Dixie. It was like a giant kind of boy thing. He just looked like he was going to kill you. There's no kind of... It was horrible. But I think you sort of take some of the kind of the bad stuff, because by and large, Everton were doing better. He's also the first kind of chairman to point out that maybe Goodison could do with some work. I mean, in the end, his solution was to, up sticks and build a new stadium, which, not everyone agreed with back then. But until then, there was a sense that Goodison was fine. And I think he pointed out and said, no, there's not enough corporate going on. I mean, he rebranded a lot of the lounges. I mean, like, for example, Tranmere Rovers had a Dixie Dean lounge before Everton. That's because of Johnson. We didn't do it. We had, like, I remember someone describing Goodison, it looked like a faded hotel on the south coast. They had, like, kind of, shitty art on the wall, kind of like horses and stuff, and you think this is a Premier League football ground. So he milked the heritage. He gave money to upgrade the tower, the kind of the Bridewell.
I read that.
Yeah, so there's a sense that he got the heritage side. So for a bit, it was all right. I mean, you could overlook the bad bit and the fact that he was a Liverpudlian, which some people couldn't forgive that, but. You think if you're given a success, and if you've been a Red in the past, then it's not perfect, but at least we're coming on. And then it all just fell apart.
Yeah, when it fell apart, I don't know if anybody watching. Well, there'll be quite a few people watching probably who'll remember this, but it was the season after we'd won the cup that season, and then obviously we'd started okay in the league, and then I think he got a few serious injuries, didn't he? And he was like, his squad was quite depleted, Royle, and then we went on a bit of a bad run. We
won the cup. They made a good season. We finished. We almost. We finished 5th. We 6th. We almost finished 5th.
That was right. Yeah.
And then the season after, we started all right. I think by that's the weird thing. Prior to Christmas, the thoughts were this team could qualify for Europe, and then after Christmas, you're right, he got a few injuries, and then the press turned against him. Well, he thought the press turned against him, and the results just went the wrong way. And then you get the sense that maybe Johnson stops trusting him, because prior to Royle being, was he sacked? I mean, technically sacked, but kind of they said it was it was mutual, but it probably wasn't. He wants to buy Flo and a 20 Flo, and the deal it wasn't going to cost a lot of money compared to what we've been spending in the past. It was kind of small change.
1.2 million, I think I remember when I read that yesterday. He wanted to buy Keoghan Flow for 1.2 million, and obviously the board were like, no. As we know what happened then. Toriando Flow went to Chelsea and scored a lot of goals, didn't he? Obviously played.
He was, he could have been. That's the thing about Royle. Like, you could look at from one point of view, you could look at what was happening and think, well, the form's dropping off, and he's bringing in players like Klaus Thompson, and maybe he's not the kind of manager you can get you to the next level. And you think, well, in that sense, maybe Johnson's right to say, well, change it up, but that only makes sense if what comes next is good. Otherwise, you say, well, Roy's done well. Let's give him a chance to kind of get through this, give him a summer, and then we'll see what happens. But he acted quickly, like it had him with Walker. But rather than bringing in something better, he promised something better, and then we got Kendall for his third stint and no money. So that was a weird thing. I mean, he'd done what he did the first time round, but then he acted in a different way, and that gave us arguably the worst Everton side in the modern era, and one of the worst seasons in the modern era too. I mean, 97, 98 was often, like in 94, we slid into oblivion. We started okay and a terrible dip. 97, 98 started badly, and it remained pretty bad. I think we had a good run over Christmas and that's it. But it was just a thoroughly bad season from start to finish. And the side, if they'd gone down, you would have thought, I don't like it, but I can see why. It was a terrible, terrible Everton side. And that was Johnson. Johnson starved. Whether you think Kendall had lost his mojo or whatever, he was starved of cash. He was bringing in players like Mitch Ward,
Maida. I was going to say, Oster, John Oster, I think.
Probably. His transfer budget was neutral for the season, so he knew. I mean, again, he was promised money, but I think he knew pretty quickly that it wasn't coming. And so he did what Kendall does. Kendall, first time round could find. Well, he went down to the lower leagues to try and find gems. He tried it again. Hutchison was a good buy. That worked, but people like Oster and Faverley, they were second-tier players, and you create a second-tier side, and you can't be surprised if that side ends up in trouble.
I think why it's important to bring this up is, again, talking about context with the modern day, and it's just what shocked me reading that, and obviously, being a young kid, I didn't quite realise it at the time, but how things went bad very quickly. So, for example, we'd had that dreadful start to the season under Mike Walker. Royle comes in. We then turn it around. Good win against Man United. Good win against Liverpool. Go on to win a cup. Next season, just miss out on Europe. If I remember rightly, we won our last game of the season, and then I think the Villa won theirs, and that meant that they got the UEFA Cup.
Arsenal again.
Sorry, I think Everton may have played Villa, beat them 1-0. That's what Everton needed to do. Yeah. And you were like, oh, it's kind of ironic because for once Everton did what they needed to do, and Arsenal had picked us. Yeah. And they were 1-0 down in like the 91st minute or whatever. And went
it was very frustrating.
But and then that's fantastic, and then we go into the next year, and then Royle had a few injuries, and before you know it, there's a bit of a miscommunication between him and Peter Johnson. He gets sacked. They go after, I think maybe went after Bobby Robson at that point. He wouldn't come. And before you know it, it's back to Kendall and we're back to square one. And then, as you say, if you looked at it on a graph, it just goes... And that's the one thing I'm concerned about now is, all right, things haven't been great and we haven't won a cup in the last few years, but things have been 11th. Isn't good enough for Everton, but it's not dire straits. And it just concerns me how quick things can go bad.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't want anybody to lose their head at the moment. Look, things are bad. This squad needs major surgery. But I'm not sure whether, pulling the trigger on Koeman or doing anything drastically silly. Do you know what I mean? That's a concern of mine. Because it's how quickly things can go bad. And that's a bit frightening.
Yeah, no, I mean, back then it was dizzying. You think, and for a fan, you think... you look at kind of the last game of the season in 98, you think, how did we get here? Because I can pretty much recall 18 months ago feeling fantastic and feeling confident about the future. And suddenly, we're looking at the championship and you think, that is so quick. And it's kind of, you can almost lose your foundation. You don't know what's going on because it's and I mean it can happen in football, obviously, because it's just it's that sort of game. You can just go wrong in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to give. If you're looking at it now, you have to give Mashiri a chance to see what he can do. A couple of windows, and same as Koeman, he's got a pedigree. You've got to see if he can more than a few months, especially when he inherited a side that was devoid of confidence, and as I've said before, kind of staffed by so many poor players. I think again, part problem with Everton is that Martinez was a fantastic salesman, so he sold us the idea of us being good, and kind of built around Lukaku. And you think, well, yeah, he's good, yeah, clearly, so maybe there's something in that. When in fact he was just kind of papering up the cracks. You think you bring in like Deulofeu for a few million, and you've got players aging. And he was living off a lot of the Moyes momentum and that kind of stuff. And you think, I think a lot of us fell for it. And you think, when you forensically look at it and you pick out each player, you say, well, he's shit and he's crap. And he doesn't need to be on our side. And you think, yeah, one by one. And I think that's a problem now. It's going to take a long time to get over.
That's the issue, though, isn't it? It's like, how much time... The modern game is you're short on time anyway. And how bad... I mean, let's just say in theory, now obviously both of us being massive Evertonians, we don't want this to happen, evidently, that goes without saying. But let's just say we lose to Arsenal, we lose to the Reds, and I want to talk about them in a second, and the 90s and how we fared against them in the 90s. Then let's say we go on Boxing Day, Leicester rejuvenated, they beat us, right? And then we've got Hull. And let's just say we've got Hull away, I think. If we got them away or at home, either way, let's just say that Everton pick up 1 point from the next 4 games. And we go into the new year, and all of a sudden we've spiralled and win like 14th, 15th. Could you see a situation where, like, we do pull the trigger or something mad happens like that, and then, we're in deep shit?
I don't know, because I mean, you can't know how you feel, would you? If you get to early January, and we've got 20 points now, we've got 20 points, so we're kind of halfway to safety. And we're playing terrible football and nothing looks right. A lot of it again depends who we bring in. If we get through the window and we don't bring in the quality and we're still playing poorly, I mean, you could see an owner pull the trigger, because you cannot tolerate relegation.
And in that situation, what would you want him to do? Right, because we've got this idea now that we were like on this. This is a project, as you said, the Mashiri project. Let's just say, in theory, let's go on further. And Koeman doesn't manage to bring in any players, right? Or he brings in one. He brings on someone like Shane Long, who'd be okay, but he's not going to get the fans excited, right? So then we get to the end of January, and things are still bad. And then he pulls the trigger. Mashiri pulls the trigger. He just loses his head and goes, "Sorry, mate, it's not working. Go on, off you go." What would you want him to do in that situation? Would you want him potentially to go and see what David Moyes is doing?
Oh, God, no.
Well, what would we do, though? Because we'd be like, right, we need somebody to keep us up.
I don't think he will. He will. I think he's gone to get Koeman with a plan in mind. He must, he's not a stupid man. He must have thought ahead. He must have seen all possibilities. He must have known this could, things might not go smoothly. He's got Steve Walsh. He must have thinking. I think he would probably think, let's just get through this season and see what... I just can't see. I think Koeman's one of those managers whose job is relatively safe, even if form isn't fantastic. I mean, you can never say never, because if you don't win a game at any point, then I wouldn't want Moyes though. I think don't go back.
Oh, I was being uber hypothetical. To be fair, Jim.
Well, you could see going for if you want safety, then you go for someone like Allardyce or Pulis or something like that. But I think if you're thinking about
I know, mate. Imagine.
If you're terrified of relegation, they're the men to go for. But if you've got a long-term plan and you're saddled with Pulis, then what's the point?
Yeah. Let's not concern us. That was bad of me. I'll put us in like a horrendous hypothetical situation. Look, mate, we've got about 10 minutes to go. So let's just talk about. Let's just talk about the derbies with Liverpool, because we've got one on the horizon and we hate them. We hate them as Evertonians now. But how, as an Evertonian in the 90s, did you feel about playing Liverpool at Goodison and at Anfield?
I never liked it. I mean, you don't, do you? The great games to go to, but I even back then, I always thought it's Liverpool. So, let's just not lose. That'd be something. I don't think. I mean, I was probably more confident back then than I am nowadays. I mean, like this one coming up again, you're thinking, please don't get a hiding. I'd almost take like a 1-0 loss, which is depressing. Really thinking, it's Liverpool. You should be thinking let's go and beat them. But I think, like I said last time, Everton had a go at Liverpool in the 90s. I mean, the game was different then, so maybe you can't do it nowadays, I don't know. But they certainly made life uncomfortable for them. And I'm not sure Liverpool enjoyed playing Everton back then. I think they knew what they were going to get. Especially come to Goodison, they'd get, we'd press them and we wouldn't mind giving them a little kick here and there. And we kind of took the game to them at times. And I think, it's going to be, this Everton side playing a Klopp side, as we know from the last Anfield Derby, it can be horrible. And I think, the form we're in, even though their form has faltered slightly, I think I'm glad we're playing them now, not maybe 4 weeks ago. But I think if we can get a point, that would be fantastic. Really, it comes to that in the end.
We had some good wins though against them in the 90s, didn't we? One that springs. This is my first memory of the Merseyside Derby was the Cadamatri one, incidentally.
Yeah,
and that was great. That was fantastic. Danny Cadamatri. If you watch footage of if you just took that game in isolation, you didn't know anything else about football, and you were like, right, watch this kid here, and you watched him do what he did. That second goal when he weaved in and out, and then it was a great finish, and I think Graham Stewart ran up and lifted him up. If you watch that now and you were like, where did that kid go? What did he go on to do? You'd go, did he go on to play for Bradford, or did he go on to play for Arsenal? Went on to play for Arsenal. What happened with Danny Cadamatri? Do you know? And this is going off topic, but what happened?
No, I remember seeing him a few times back then. He could always do stuff. He was quite like hustly and bustly, kind of head down. He'd charge up people and charge the goal, but I just don't think he had the quality to really make it at the top level. But he was a very kind of he was a fighter. I think he suited Everton at that time. I think he was the kind of that kind of player when we were more kind of dogs of wardy. And he's the kind of player you wouldn't mind coming on now. He'd sit never go. But he was I don't know. And I never thought watching him. You didn't think, he's like Rooney. You wouldn't think this is something special here. You just think, he could score a few goals here and there, but.
Right, so he didn't have, because Franny Jeffers is another one. Are you looking back on Jeffers' career now? Do you think it's you're probably a lot more disappointed in what Francis Jeffers went on to do for Everton and in his career as a whole, as opposed to what that you'd expected Danny Cadamatri to do?
Yeah, I think there was more hype around Jeffers, and certainly when he first appeared, he looked good. He played really well with Kevin Campbell. He linked up well. But back then, I think as Evertonians, you got used to kind of bright young things coming through, like Ebrel and Michael Branch and Cadamarchi, and never really coming to much, or not coming to what you were promised. I think that's why I think Rooney was such a massive surprise, because you're thinking, there's another one now. While Liverpool were kind of bringing through like Fowler and Owen and always seemed to come off, we'd have these great hopes for the future. It would just kind of come to nothing, or just become squad men or alright players. And so, Jeffers wasn't a surprise. That wasn't kind of the career you think he might have got. Rooney's the surprise, really.
Yeah. Obviously that when Rooney first burst onto the scene, it was just amazing. And there is a little bit of me that's kind of a little bit disappointed that still that we didn't see him for longer at Everton. But that's a whole different video, isn't it? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start doing this now. And I'm starting with you, Jim, as you're a veteran of GrandOldTeam TV, mate. I want to ask you a question to finish off with. I want you to make a prediction. I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm not going to tweet you in 12 months' time and go, "You were wrong, Jim." But I want you to tell me, what's your prediction for Everton over the next 12 months?
12 months?
Yeah, moving forward. Where do you think Everton will be in 12 months' time?
Well, I think this season, I think we'll probably end up about 9th or 10th. I think we've got enough quality. A manager who can do stuff, and I think they'll bring in some talent. I don't think they'll have a great season. I think we'll continue to kind of pick up a few wins here and there and just stumble along. Probably get nothing in the FA Cup. And I think I don't know. I'm hopeful. I think when the kind of Merseyside project gets going properly, you got to think. He barely had a window, Koeman. He said the squad wasn't fit, and we all knew that. And that doesn't get turned around right away. I mean, you think of Klopp last season. I mean, I know they did well at the end, but they were losing games. They were kind of they weren't like they are now. And that was with a better squad. So I think once he's had a couple of windows and a pre-season to get the players to the kind of fitness level he wants, clear out the dead wood. I mean, there's a lot of dead wood to clear out. I'm still confident that we can have a better season. I don't think we're going to get top 4 for a while. There's too much quality elsewhere, and our problems are too big. But there's nothing to think we couldn't finish, I don't know, 6th or 7th next season. But if the investment is there, and if Walsh and Koeman kind of get it together, but then I thought we'd finish 7th this season. So what do I know?
We'll see. Hey, look, there's still time, and as you say, if we do have a good January and turn things around, then who knows? Look, mate. Again, Jim, always appreciate you coming on. Your book, Highs, Lows and Bakayoko's Everton in the 90s. It's on the screen now. Mate, get over to it. You think you can get it from Amazon, Jim, right? And you can buy it on
Amazon, Woodstones, yeah,
right.
Local bookshops.
Mate, if someone buys it from Amazon, that you get a cut of that. You do get a cut of that, don't you?
Oh, my cut's always the same, so
cool.
You can buy everyone. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good then, mate. Can people nick it or not then?
Sorry?
Can people nick it?
I mean, they can. I mean, don't they?
No, but if someone nicks it from... I'm not even going to go down this road. I was trying to work out... Because Waterstones have already brought it, right? They've already brought a certain amount. So if someone went in and nicked it from Waterstones, like, it'd be okay, wouldn't it? Because you've already got the cash. Not that you have
I don't get the cash to the sale, so no, don't nick it.
Oh, don't nick it. No, don't nick any books.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're watching this, do not nick
But don't nick my book. Nick
nick other books, mate. There's loads of books out there you want to nick.
Yeah.
Look, mate, I really appreciate it. Have a fantastic Christmas, and we'll get you on in the new year to talk about the final segment of your book.
Cheers. Thanks, Dan.